AKAPADers, welcome to the 28th day of Dread, and I am Peter A. DeLuca, AKAPAD, from AKAPAD's Audio Audacity podcast, and we're talking about a bucket list movie of mine that I've seen a lot of action figures for, a lot of posters, a lot of prints, a lot of redesigned DVD covers, 4K releases, the list goes on and on. It's always been haunting me, pun intended, that I haven't seen Re-Animator, H.P. Lovecraft's Re-Animator, and I'm here to talk to you about it. And there's someone continues the thread a couple days ago. I think this movie works perfectly with Return of the Living Dead because it deals with the same concepts, and it's just like a different way to get to the party, different avenues into that door that is so much fun. And hey, let's hit that intro, let's get to it. I got something to talk to you about. (1985), Stuart Gordon. He kind of went into this. He had to go into this movie with a full vision, like full elements understood. I realized that a lot of these movies that I discussed for 31 Days of Dread, they are well documented. It's a lot like Star Wars, where when you do a deep dive into Star Wars, you not only go into the movies, but you go into how every single one of those movies were made. Star Wars really popularized selling the process because the story, the mythology, the continuity of Star Wars is just so magnifying. It was easier to almost create this cottage industry of selling the process, and that led to the DVD boom, because DVDs became so much more valuable than VHS tapes because of these extra features with commentaries. Every single movie at one point had a commentary, and it had at least a 30 minute documentary that for some of the lower ended movies doubled as like Sci-Fi Channel specials. So I go through Return of the Living Dead a couple days ago, and completely get my mind blown away by that movie. Not just from the practical special effects, but from the horror solutions that movie provided. Now, this movie, it's essentially a modern day Frankenstein. We're dealing with a weirdo. We're dealing with a magical green chemical that can reanimate people. Now, the major fault of this movie, it's that we don't get into that chemical enough. There is no real exposition, or it's not drawn out. Now, a lot of times when we see these in movies, when we see similar exposition in movies, we check out, and if we get it more than once, we think it's too many times. So that's a part of one of the trick, the magic, the trickery, the magician of storytelling. It's that we work in the exposition in such a way that we easily receive it. It seems natural, and we log it into our brains, and we move on. Now, this movie, I feel like, didn't have it. The funny thing is, I just finished watching tomorrow's movie, Day 29, Bride of the Re-Animator. Bride of the Re-Animator is everything I thought this movie would be. Now, it's a very similar situation between Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein from last year's 31 Days of Dread. We're talking the Universal 1940 movies, where when you think of a Frankenstein movie, you're actually thinking of its sequel, Bride of Frankenstein. Very similar to with Rocky. When you imagine a Rocky movie, you're actually, and this is like if you've never seen it, if you've seen clips, like if the idea of the movie starts to form in your head from it, from the pop culture impact, and you haven't seen it, you get ideas, you get you formulate something. Most people who haven't seen any of the Rocky movies think it's Rocky IV. They think it's going to unfold and be a lot like Rocky IV, where in fact Rocky I is such a difference. It's such a different movie than Rocky IV. You can make the same argument with First Blood and Rainbow. where people don't imagine Stallone as an action star in First Blood. They imagine him in the later movies. Now, this Bride of Frankenstein is more of what I thought this movie would be, because we have like goofy effects, like good looking effects, but they're goofy. They're parts of people mashed together to create living forms. This Re-Animator, okay, Re-Animator just essentially is people being reanimated. The big story hook, or like the big antagonist that comes up, is a guy that's murdered, that's reanimated, that's bribing our Dr. Frankenstein. And that's essentially what this movie is an analog for, or an allegory, or it's mirroring Frankenstein. The great God speech, the great, your God failed, I'm succeeding speech is in the next movie. It's not in this movie. That's a lot of what I'm talking about. But along the way, we have a character. Like I was really taken aback by our main guy here, who is Stuart. Right? No, Bruce Abbott. Bruce Abbott is such a he is this character. He is locked in. He's locked in to the point that like his coldness, his exactness, it's just excused. He's driven. He's a driven individual, and this movie kind of, it starts in the trope way. Kind of like, it's somewhat decent that it starts with this failed experiment. And then, that's how we're introduced to our Dr. Frankenstein. And then it goes into academia. He gets accepted into this medical community, medical school, and then immediately starts using this green chemical to, experiment, to bring people back, to prove that life can exist through death. That is the hook. That's the draw of any of these movies. That's why I think these movies are pure horror, because they ask, they beg for these questions to be answered, and these questions are not answerable questions, and that is a little bit of the parable that even us as an audience, that's what we struggle with. Now, I don't want to say the effects and maybe some of the gore disappointed me. It's in no way close to Return of the Living Dead. And this movie, I think, gets a little bit too much credit for the effects. Just not the execution. I think the execution is there, but the ideas around the effects. Like the effect of the effects, so to speak. So I was a little bit taken aback by that. And going back to the intro, this is one of the reasons why I love parts of the 31 Days of Dread, because I literally just watched this movie, just watched the second one, and I'm talking to you and I'm recording it. Like this movie hasn't had a lot of time to sit. The 31 Days of Dread and my podcast, we're about long form film conversation, and and even throughout this month, one of the additional reasons, there's a lot of reasons now, but one of the reasons why we're a little bit behind is because I did go back and do a deep dive on some of these movies, just to be double familiar with them, just to have fresh ideas in my head of what I thought worked and what I thought didn't work. Now, the other awesome trope that we have in this movie that is kind of fading, and I think a good solid reason why these movies are resonating, is we do have sex. We do have boobies. We have a naked woman 3 times in this movie, and she is spectacularly looking good. Like, holy crap, rock and roll. And this idea of sex and gore and blood and godlike characters, it is a mix. I don't feel like you could make this movie today and subtract the sex. Now, The Bride of Frankenstein doesn't have enough of that, because again, that movie starts to hit the mainstream and we have to tone it down. We have to bring it back. We see this all the time with sequels. This is exactly what we saw in Return of the Living Dead Part 2. That's another reason why I was majorly disappointed with that. Because I wanted to at least echo and be in tone, and kind of, again, to quote George Lucas, be like poetry and have some of the same beats. But at the same time, it is an 80s sequel. That is what we expect. That is to be expected. Within 80 sequels. But is this movie a full recommendation? Is it like a go-to and watch if you haven't seen it? 100%. This is one of those movies. 1985, Stuart Gordon. It's a must-watch. Stuart Gordon, another journeyman. This is the same point I just made with Prophecy. Okay, if Stuart Gordon was in the Steven Spielberg position, he would have had as many hits that hit the lexicon, as many movies that carried on, because the resources and talent available. Now, this guy also directed the 1990 Robot Jocks. He wrote Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. You see some of it. You see a little bit too with Honey, I Shrunk the Kids of him slipping into the mainstream. But at the same time, if he had the full resources that some of these lexicon cultural filmmakers have had, he would have had the impact. He would have been able to do more with some of his ideas. He would have been able to access other people's ideas. He would have been an industry of his own. I'm guaranteed, I can guarantee it, okay? Maybe in an alternate timeline, it's there, and it's happening. And he also directed From Beyond and Dolls. So from 85 to 87, he gave us one, the three coolest movies: Re-Animator, From Beyond, and Dolls. Okay, my sister and I, the 1987 Dolls, I think that hit my list for the 31 Days of Dread the last 2 years. My sister and I used to love Dolls. We used to get that movie all the time from the video store and just watch it endlessly. We used to watch that and House. I don't know why. Those are two horror movies from my youth that echo. The echo in me even today. Now, we have to talk about this one other guy, Richard Band. This movie opens with one of the most cool, exact, simple credit sequences you can ever imagine. Okay, it's black. We're dealing with bright blues, bright pinks, bright greens. These are colors that scream to me because I love using these colors for my design work and illustration work. And we're just dealing with medical chart type stuff. The music alone, Richard Band's theme for this movie, and the way how the music is used in this movie tells another story. It accentuates, it pumps, it gets it going. Okay, it is as good as the music in anything you can imagine. Let's just go back to Star Wars. It's as good as John Williams in Star Wars New Hope. Richard Band, who has a career, 85 films this guy has been involved in. Most of these films you've never even heard of, because, again, if this guy had resources, if he had attention, if he was pulled from the ether and worked with a Francis Ford Coppola, if he worked even with a Michael Bay, we would know his name. But we don't know his name because he's working in the lower tier of the industry. So even in 92, he scores 5 movies: Transformers 2, Seed People, The Resurrected, Dr. Morbid, Demonic Toys. You get the point? You have to have that level of productivity when you're not scoring E.T. or Jurassic Park. He deserves so much credit. I think of all the movies of the 31 Days of Dread, this is by far my favorite score, my favorite score, Discovery. The theme, I think, is one of the best in cinema history. I hate to say it, but Richard Band, I'm sure if we do more of a deeper dive with him, we will find out more themes and more he's just done so much, but he's probably done more that we can all relate to. But look, everyone, for the 31 Days of Dread, this is rounding out our sequel block because we're doing Re-Animator and Bride of Re-Animator, and I wanted to do two fresh movies, and I really wanted that to be See No Evil 1 and 2, starring Kane from WWE. And the first one was and the second one was oh crap, no. Not enough meat on the bone for me to do 2 episodes. Even though I still want to like discuss those movies. And then I thought Return of the Living Dead, Return of the Living Dead 2, but again, Return of the Living Dead 2, not enough meat on the bone for a full discussion. I took a chance, I took a swing because, like I never heard weird things about Bride of Re-Animator, and I was kind of happy, happy I made that choice. I think it was the right choice. So get ready for day 29 is Bride of the Re-Animator with your boy AKAPAD. Go check out this movie. Leave me a comment wherever you're listening to this, and send me a like. Let's rock and roll. Until next time, everyone. Let's do this.